Hey guys, and welcome to the Bold Believers podcast. My name is Braden Harris, and I'm going to be your host for this podcast. This podcast is for Christian middle school and high school students. We're going to be diving into the problems that you guys face on a daily basis, and we're going to be talking about how to overcome them biblically. We hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, and welcome back to episode number 4 of the Bold Believers podcast. My name is Braden Harris. I am your host, and I'm here with my beautiful wife, Meaghan.
Hey guys, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Dang, it's already week number 4.
Week number 4. Can you believe it?
It's pretty crazy, actually.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. I hope you guys are still enjoying the podcast. Kind of like I told some of you guys Sunday night, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of different topics. And really the cool part about today is that one of the topics was from one of you guys. And so if you guys have any topics that you want, drop them in the comments. You can do it on Instagram or YouTube, or text in our group chat, or text me or Meaghan individually, and you might be able to hear one of your questions answered on the podcast. And so today, our whole episode is about breaking generational curses and breaking generational chains. If some of you guys went to Rush, what was his name? Trey had talked about breaking some chains, and his was a little bit of a different context, but sometimes our chains are not our own, right? Sometimes our chains are our parents or our guardian or our brothers or sisters, or a grandpa or a grandma, and sometimes those chains naturally just get lost in generations. And so today we're going to go into a little bit about what that looks like, how to break those chains, and also what we can do to prevent some of those things happening in the future, and just kind of how you can guard yourself and how you can break free of some of those generational curses and chains. But if you're watching on YouTube or on Instagram, you might see that we're in a little bit of a different space. We just got done creating our podcast room, so it's still a little bit of a work in progress, but it's a super cool deal, and so we're super excited about it. But Maggie, if you will, kind of just talk about what a generational curse is and kind of what are the different curses or different things that kind of go in with it, and then we'll kind of talk about it.
So when I think of a when I think of a generational curse, I think of something that one of my ancestors have done that has been passed on, and it's not necessarily a good thing. So a generational curse can look like pornography addiction, alcoholism, drug abuse, divorce, toxic behaviors, that type of thing. I believe that's when I think of a generational curse, that's what I think of.
Sure, like anything passed down from a parent or somebody over the years, like somebody like a generational curse would be, hey, my parents struggle with drugs because their parents struggled with drugs.
And now I'm struggling with drugs.
Yeah, and so it's like it's those things that sometimes it feels like you're fighting a losing battle only because of, hey, I was like you talk about people who come from broken homes, they're statistically more like their statistics are higher to be incarcerated or to do different things like that. And so kind of what that means is like if your parents have problems, the chances of you having those same problems multiply by a lot. And so like if your parents never struggled with drugs, you might struggle with drugs, but statistically it's going to be a far less than if your parents were addicted to meth, or if they struggled with smoking marijuana or doing some things like that. And you see that, and that's like your norm. That's your normal. You're gonna struggle with some of that stuff way more than you would if your parents didn't struggle with some of that stuff. Divorce too. Like if your parents are divorced, statistically, right, you're more inclined to be divorced. I mean, it's already what, like 1 in 4 married couples get divorced.
And it's definitely it's gotten, I don't know, would you say higher? Like, it's less likely in a group of people for you to be married now, especially with our generation, because everyone's like,
I'm gonna do me.
I'm gonna do me, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't love you anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So that on top of a generational curse, you're kind of against a lot of odds.
Playing the odds, yeah. So, Maggie, why don't you give a little example of possibly a generational curse that's been passed down to you, and something that you had to break through, um, because I know I have one. So,
Yeah.
um, kinda go.
So one thing, I have a kind of a weird family dynamic. I have my biological mom, I have my dad. We gave up her rights. My dad got remarried, and the person he's married to is who I consider my mom. And so when I was a kid, I did grow up with my biological mom until about the age of 11, and she was really toxic and she was in and out of relationships and there was just one guy after another, and she would there was always just fighting and screaming and yelling, and when I got into high school, I'm like, "Oh, he's cute, whatever." Those little things and dating and the serious relationships, and I noticed myself acting the way that she would act, and so I had these toxic relationships at such a young age, and I look back and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, thank God for taking me out of that, and, like, helping me break those habits," because I was continuing that cycle of toxicity, and so for me, I had to kind of my mom, she really helped me to reel it back and like, "Okay, what does godly marriage look like? What does a godly relationship? What does a godly woman look like?" And, that really helped me break those generational chains because I don't wanna end up divorced like my parents were. And now that my dad's remarried, they have such a strong and healthy marriage, a Christian marriage, and it really gives me hope, and now that we're married, it changes my perspective on, like, what I wanted and, like, what we have now and, like, what we're building.
Yeah. So would you say that in the moment, whenever Kim was trying to shout out to Kim, um, whenever Kim was trying to help you overcome those generational curses, in the moment, was it easy?
No. And if you talk to my mom, she'll tell you there's a lot of crazies and that I had that I dated, and she even told Braden, when we were I don't know if we were already engaged or dating, and, she would just because I wouldn't listen, I would just go back, and I would always pray, "God, give me a sign," and, he would give me a sign, and I would be like, I don't like that sign, I'm just gonna do what I wanna do," and so I would go back to that relationship, and so my mom, she would just pray, like, she was my prayer warrior that we just would not work out, that we would break up, and I'm so thankful that she just continued to cry out to God in those moments because I was not listening, I wanted to live for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know for me, um, kinda one generational curse I had to break was lust. Um, my dad had some stuff happen to him whenever he, um was really young, and then whenever he was a teenager, he was kind of a little playa in a small town, and so, that kinda carried over a little bit into my parents' marriage. Not a lot, but enough to cause some fighting and some different things, and, me and my brother had heard some things, and, um, there was at one spot where there was a bunch of fighting going on in our household just constantly, and it's just because my dad wasn't unfaithful, but it's just, like, some things were getting out of hand and some different things like that, and so, um, for me, I feel like something and there was stuff that happened to me in my childhood and some different things, but one thing I've always struggled with was lust. Um, and it's one of those things, like, I don't even have social media really. Like, I manage the Grace Students account on Instagram, but other than that, I don't have Snapchat, I don't have a Twitter, I don't get on my personal Instagram anymore really. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm trying to prevent myself because we talked about this the other day. Everything on Instagram and everything on social media, it's all so sexualized. And especially me being married and being a man now and a pastor, like, it's one of those things where it's like, I have to stay guarded. Like, if we like, literally today, Megan was watching this movie series and she was like, "Oh, there's 2 inappropriate scenes." And I was like, "Babe, I'm not watching it." And it's just because it's like, if I accidentally see one of those scenes or if I accidentally do something, like, who knows what the outcome could be? Like, who know even talking about something or even, like, I have to purposefully look the other way whenever other women walk around me or do some stuff like that. Like, I truly try to stay guarded 24/7, because you never know whenever the devil is gonna try to use something to
Yeah.
destroy your marriage or to destroy your relationship. Um, and you little boys out there that are watching porn on your phone and doing some stuff, like, bro, you gotta stop that. man, porn, like, ruined me for, like, 8 oh, like, 10 years. I mean, I already talked
Yeah.
about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
porn, it was the downfall of
Yeah.
me because like, I couldn't look at a woman without being like, "Ooh," you know what I'm saying? Like, sexualizing her in my head, and it took a long time for me to get those thoughts out of my head and to finally, like, have the godly perspective of a woman and truly think about them in the way of, like, "Hey, this is God's creation." Like, this is another person that God has created, and, like, for me to be objectifying them how I was objectifying them, it was kinda disgusting.
Yeah.
And I look back at it now and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I did that," and that but anyways, porn, worst thing ever. Like, porn is a gateway to other sins too. Like, you start watching porn, you're gonna get mad, you're gonna get pissed off, you're gonna get whatever, and it's just because, like, porn it's just like marijuana. Marijuana is a gateway drug. Porn is a gateway to other things, like other sins, other everything, and it's not good. It's not a good web to be in.
Yeah.
So, like the lust went to porn and some different things like that. And so that was a generational curse that I had to break. And it's something that I
Mhm.
constantly have to work at because you never know whenever the devil like I never say, "Oh, I don't struggle with porn anymore." Because like you never know as soon as you say that, the devil's gonna tempt you and it's gonna be like, whatever. So I will continue to say, yeah, I have a problem. And like I'm just gonna guard myself
Mhm.
completely because I don't even want to brag. Like, no, I
Yeah.
overcame that. And it's
Yeah.
like it's just like an alcoholic, right? Like an alcoholic for the rest of their life, they'll be like, no, I'm an alcoholic. Because if they have a sip of beer or if they're triggered around in an environment, it's like you never know. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's like for those of you guys who struggle with anger or depression or whatever, like it's one of those things where it's like those will constantly be a thing that haunts you, and you're gonna have to constantly improve yourself to be better to not let those overcome you. And it's just like you have to be on guard
Yeah.
with whatever your sin or whatever your generational curse or whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that you said that. So on Sunday at Bible study, we were watching this video, and the title of it was Identity, and it was the beginning of it was this, teenage boy, and he was sharing his story, and, for most of his life, he grew up a PK kid, and which is the pastor kid for those who don't know what PK is, and his parents were getting a divorce, and so later on, he found out that his dad had a problem with porn, and that was what led to their parents' divorce. And then he found out that later on, like in this season of time, his grandpa he got arrested for being a child predator, and he was saying that, "Oh, it's just porn. I only watched it a couple days. It's not that bad." But once he realized that it started with his grandpa and it led to his dad in the spots that they were in, he was saying in the video that you never know where that sin's gonna lead you. And I love how you were saying, like, you always are always guarded and, like, really, you have to put on the armor of God daily because you never know, like you were saying, when the devil was gonna when he's gonna tempt you. And I really just I keep thinking about when you were speaking about that guy and how he had to realize, like, "Okay, I could be where my grandpa's at if I don't get a hold on this now." And that's just a very real thing when it comes to these generational curses, and you have to be willing to step out and um, break those chains.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where a big point of today is like you can be your own person.
Mhm.
Right, like, you can be who God calls you to be, and I know for a lot of you guys, you're in middle school and high school, and you're sitting at the house right now, and you're like, "Man, my parents suck. Like, they're doing this, like, I can see, like, whatever, blah, blah, blah." First off, your parents love you,
Mhm.
and your parents everybody has problems, okay?
Yeah.
Don't don't go too ham on your parents because they're having to raise you
Yeah.
guys.
They're
Um,
doing the best they can.
they are, and everybody has everything, right? You can't be like, "Oh, my parents suck," but not examine yourself and be like, "Oh, I suck too," right? Like, we all are trying the best. Like, if you're an only child, this is the first time your parents have ever had a kid. Like, it's one of those things, like, your parents have never raised you before. Like, there wasn't like, you aren't a clone. And so your parents are just trying to do the best they can. But some of you guys are in a little bit of a situation where it's like, "Hey, my parents are actually doing some stuff that they should not be." Like, they're doing drugs or they're bringing a whole bunch of different people home or they're doing getting drunk and kind of getting rowdy and angry and different things and so like those things are not okay first off um and if some of that stuff is happening then I would say suggest getting some help and telling an adult that you trust and
Yeah.
um just so we can help you out and possibly get you out of or help you out in a situation that you might be in. But the biggest thing is that you do not have to be that. Um, you do not have to be who your parents were. You do not have to be what the world wants you to be. And the world, honestly, they want you to be a statistic, right? The world is like, oh, your parents smoke weed? Yeah, you're probably going to smoke weed, probably going to go to jail, probably going to blah, 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 whatever. But you don't have to be like that because God calls us to act like Christ, to follow Christ, to try and chase to be perfect just like Christ. And the more that you pursue Christ and the more that you have a relationship with him, what does a relationship with Christ look like? It looks like reading your Bible, it looks like praying, it looks like having solitude, it looks like journaling your prayers or journaling your thoughts and your feelings and confessing those to Christ. Um, it also looks like coming to church, and it also looks like being fed spiritually, and it looks like serving, and it looks like having community and a strong group of Christians around you. And so, whenever you're doing all of those things, ultimately, you're going to be chasing after Christ, and you're going to be closer to Christ. And no one's going to be perfect, but our goal is to strive to be perfect like Christ. And the closer you are to Christ, the less there's going to be sin in your life. And we talked about Sunday. Sin is the separation from God. So if you sin a lot, you're going to be really far away from God. If you are chasing after Christ and there's not a whole bunch of room for sin, you're going to be really close to God. And so some of you guys out there are struggling with, hey, my parents are doing X, Y, and Z. My dad cheated on my mom. My mom is doing drugs. My mom can't stop bringing a whole bunch of guys into my house. Blah blah blah, whatever. But the thing is that God has called you and God has placed you on this earth to do something to further His kingdom. And you do not have to end up in some of those places or in some of those curses or in some of those things that maybe your parents are in, or maybe that you've seen, or maybe that you've experienced. Um, and I know that's something that I know in a lot of, I guess, youth groups or youth ministries. I don't know if it's talked about a bunch, but truly, Satan wants you to fail. Like Satan will tempt your grandparents, and like Satan's playing the long game, and it's like Satan wants you to fail, and he's going to do that in any way possible. So if you need to grow up in a house home that sucks, that's what he's going to have you do because he wants you to fail, and he wants you to trip, and he wants you to stumble, and he wants you to be as far away from God as possible.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
It's tough, but you can do it.
You can. You
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, kind of getting close on time. So kind of last comments. Maggie, what do you think kind of is the best starting point to break some of these generational chains?
I think speaking out about it to someone like an older person that you trust and having finding a mentor, finding someone to mentor you and walk aside you with life. And I think also really just praying to God, like God reveal to me what is holding me back. What has my family done in the past that I am close to like repeating? And I think whenever you ask him, also give time for him to answer. And I think really just identifying areas in your life that you need to either let go of or change, whether that's your attitude or things that you're doing. If you're out drinking and smoking weed because your parents let you do that, that's probably something you should reevaluate and maybe get new friends. If you're sleeping around, hey, maybe you should cut that out, you know?
Zip that zipper up, baby.
Yeah. That type of thing, you know? I know a lot of us often say like, "Ugh, I never wanna be like my parents, I never wanna be like her," but oftentimes it's so easy to say that, but we become what we're around, like what we're shown. And so really just taking a step back into evaluating what it is that you've been taught and what you've been shown and, just thinking, "Okay, God, what can I do to change and better myself?"
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was my number one thing too, is just reflect. Like, reflect on your parents, reflect on you, reflect on, hey, what is something that's happening right now that I do not want to take into my future? Because
Yeah.
ultimately, you guys are going to grow up and you're going to be your own people. Some of you guys are seniors listening to this, and you guys are about to become your own people.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys, there might be some things, and not for all of you, because some of you guys have great parents. Some of you guys are like, no, if I end up like my parents, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's great. And keep doing that. But for some of you guys, that's not the case. But I'm telling you, you don't have to be like that. So reflect. Think about, hey, what am I doing that I don't like? What am I doing? Like look at your parents. Like, hey, what do they do that it's just like, oh man, I wish they wouldn't do that. Right? Like I wish my mom wouldn't smoke weed or bring a whole bunch of people to the house, or I wish my dad wasn't running around on my mom, or I wish that my dad didn't get a felony and sell a whole bunch of drugs and blah blah blah, whatever. Like you aren't destined to do that. Right? God has called you on a different path. But I think you have to recognize what that path is. And you can only do that with a relationship to Christ. Um, and if you're a parent listening to this right now, because this is hot topic, um, guys, we know everybody struggles. Everybody has things. And this is even good for you to reflect on and reflect about. Like just because we're telling your students to reflect on what maybe some of you guys have been doing, maybe reflect on what you're doing. Maybe reflect on, hey, what things did you learn from your parents that maybe you're doing and you're putting into your parenting, and you're like, "Man, I hated whenever my parents did that. So why am I putting through my kids through that?" Um, and ultimately, like we said it before, you guys are doing the best you can, but I know that there's always some things that we can be better at. I know there's always some things that we can improve. And so we would just encourage you guys, reflect,
Yeah.
think about what are you doing? How are you parenting? How are you doing all this? Um,
And I think too, like, reflecting on curses that maybe you've broken and share that with your student, like, "Hey, I struggled through with this because I saw my grandparents struggle with this, I saw my parents struggle with this, and I did not wanna do that. I didn't want you to have to do that." And I think that would be some encouragement as a parent to sit down with your student and be like, "Hey, like, I know that life is hard, but I'm right here with you. You can always come talk to me. You can always, vent to me. We can get through this together." Because I feel like that's an important thing too, and that'll definitely be a way to help not only your child strengthen their relationship with Christ, but strengthen your relationship together. I love me and my mom, we have the best relationship, and me and her, we're best friends, and I know that when I was going through these things, she was the one person looking back like, "Wow, my mom, she really was, a great example for me."
yeah. But guys, that's all the time that we have for today. So, guys, if you don't know what this podcast is, or if it was just randomly sent to you by a friend, my name is Braden Harris, and this is my beautiful wife Megan, and we do ministry together. Um, and guys, we are the student pastors of Grace Christian Fellowship on 3450 Billy Hex. Shout out to that address. Um, guys, we have Encounter on Sunday nights, and what that is our middle school and high school um, youth group times. And if you don't have a place to go, or if you don't even know who Jesus is, or what this podcast is, or what all of this is about, I mean, come check it out. We'd love to have you guys. We love you. We care about you, and that's why we kind of dive into some of these deeper topics of, hey, there's real stuff in this world. Satan is real. His demons are out to get you. Like these generational curses are real. And we want what's best for you guys. So, we actually don't have a regular encounter this Sunday, but we are going to have a night of worship. It's going to be amazing. A lot of you guys are singing in that, so we're super excited. But we'd love to see you guys there. We'll see you next week.